Okay, three, two, one. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another elite episode of the Get Authentic with Marcus show. I'm your host, Marques Ogden. On today's episode, we are joined by Mr. Rob Kalwarowsky. But before we up Rob to the stage, I want to thank one of our amazing sponsors and partners. We'd like to thank Legacy Ventures, owned by Mr. Jack Brown. Legacy Ventures is an organization that helps you get into the franchising business. And we're so excited about this new partnership with one of our collaborative partners, Mr. Jack Brown and Legacy Ventures. Now, here he is. Rob, how you doing today, Rob?
Good, Marcus. How are you?
Doing well, thank you. First question, Rob. What does the word authentic/authenticity mean to you?
I love this question, Marcus, and I know it's something that you and I both work on with our clients. And so I'll answer this kind of in the inverse is we're, for the most part, living through our protection. And it makes us put our masks on. And this is when, we don't feel good enough. We don't feel like we're accepted. We feel like we have to achieve more, do more, be more in order so that we get what we want from the world. And that's inauthentic. And those are those feelings of stress and anxiety and feeling like, I got to achieve, I got to achieve. If I don't achieve, then I'm not. Authenticity is what's underneath all of that. And for me, I call it igniting the masks. And once we ignite the masks, our true self emerges, which has the traits of confidence, courage, clarity, persistence, playfulness. And it's that feeling of, I don't need to prove anything anymore. I am, and people can take it how I am.
Love that. Ladies and gentlemen, it is you are who you are, and people can learn to respect you, value you, appreciate you for who you are. And I got to tell you all the time, I'm flawed, right? I have flaws. I have things I want to work on, I want to get better at. And it will be that way to the day I die. But I'll never be somebody that's going to tell you that I'm perfect or be disingenuous or be unauthentic because that's not who I am. I'm about helping people and about helping everybody get to where they want to in life. So, Rob, tell us more about yourself, your backstory, and then what you're doing now currently to help your client base.
Absolutely. And so I'm I'm an overachiever just like you. My parents taught me early in life to do well in school, to achieve, and like I developed a mask myself of being this. We people used to call me reliable Rob, and so it was I'd get A's in schools. Like when I started playing water polo, it was like deliver, deliver, deliver. It doesn't matter what we need someone to do, Rob will do it. And it allowed me played on the Canadian junior national team, went to MIT, and then when I got into work, I was still using that high achieving mask. And what happened was I was dropped into an environment where it was a toxic work environment and I couldn't achieve. I didn't know how to. The move, everything kept changing. And it was this element of status quo was we've always done it this way. Don't worry about rocking the boat. Like, don't change. And for me, that was extremely destabilizing. And that turned into some depression and mental health issues. And eventually a suicide attempt in 2013. And we think that when we hit rock bottom, and you know this too, is we think that like that's the moment. We quit our job, we move to the beach, we make this big transformation, and like life is perfect. But it's not like that. Like when I woke up the next morning and I found myself still alive, the mask came back on and I got up, got dressed, and I went back to work because I needed to achieve. And that's all I knew. Fast forward a number of years, I started learning one is the mask that I wore, and how to take them off. Of course, a lot of this was in therapy with coaching, and through that process, that's changed the narrative for me. And that's what I help my clients do today. And as you know, it's once we start removing these masks, we can accept. And so a lot of these masks, some of the most prominent ones are the I achievement mask that I have, the imposter syndrome mask, where people don't feel like they're good enough, so they don't pursue their goals. They're just handicapped on that. And so once we start to unworry those and become our true self, it's not about being perfect, but you mentioned none of us are perfect. And it's not that we don't need to keep learning and growing. Just it takes it from part so I'm not enough, I don't, to I am enough. And I can go and take these steps and do these things. And then you ultimately get to higher levels of success. And so for me, I pivoted out of engineering. Um, I've done a TED talk. It's been seen by over 1,000 people. I've just come out with my new book, Capitalizing on Chaos. And now I coach high achieving folks, entrepreneurs, executives, Olympic gold medalists, you know, to become, to achieve their goals, but also through becoming themselves.
Rob, I love this. Let's talk more about your book. Talk about, what it really was aimed to do and what was the main mission and or mantra in regards to writing your awesome book.
Yeah. So capitalizing on chaos, I started with a quote from Muji, and he says, "Step into the fire of self discovery. This fire will not burn you, it will burn what you're not. And you're not who you are in chaos. You're not fear. You're not uncertainty. You're not stress. And the behaviors that you make when you're in those states of fear, you're acting under your fight and flight response, which is not you. It's like the animalistic part of our brains that are just trying to stay alive. And so, in this world of chaos, in order for us to be the best leaders for ourselves, our teams, our families, and the world, we have to learn to create inner safety and peace, which is found in self. And then that spreads into our businesses, our families, and the world.
It's very interesting. I tell people all the time, you have to learn about yourself to become the best version of yourself. And so, example, my business partner, her name is Dawn, a very good friend of mine, one of my best friends actually, asked me this question. She said, Marcus, are you fulfilled where you are in your life? And I told her without hesitation, without even thinking about the answer is yes. And I said, when I was married, and I'm divorced now. When I was married to the wrong person, my life was never fulfilled. I was never achieving enough. I could never do enough. I could never have enough. I could never be what I felt I needed to be to make her happy, to make myself happy. And now that I get to come home and I have peace, right? Because capitalizing on chaos, I say it all the time, chaos is going to happen. But it's the old saying, right? Life is 10% what happens to you and 90% how you deal with it. So for me now, coming home to my home and having it be my home the way I want it done and the way I want to have it, set up, but the peace and the serenity. And I actually moved into a development named Serenity. That's where God put me. And then God said, okay, Mark, you've been doing that well, big fella. I'm going to move you onto Serendipity Drive. So that's something where I live now on Serendipity Drive in a development called Serenity. So I love this because, again, ladies and gentlemen, to capitalize on chaos, you have to find your inner self, your inner greatness. And again, realize that you are the key to capitalizing on all the chaos around, because you can't control what's going on around you, but you can control yourself. So let's talk about, before we get into your coaching, talk about your TED Talks. You say it saw 300,000 people saw that, which is amazing. Can you shed more light on it? Because I know a lot of people, right, Rob, want to do a TED Talk, want to do, get that type of, visibility, which is very important if you want to be a speaker, coach, author. Talk to us about how that came about.
Yeah. So the TED Talk, it's on how to handle a bad boss. And I mean, I had a bad boss, and then also beyond, I mean, 63% of people have a bad boss right now, according to the research. And so it's an incredibly high number, right? And it's not just folks that are, when you think of the classic bad boss, you're thinking of like the micromanager, the person who yells at you, the person who dominates you, the person who's like that command and control, abusive, narcissistic type of person. But there are folks that are also on the other end of the spectrum who are people that I see a lot more lately than I think I did 5 years ago. But it's like people who don't want to accept responsibility or accountability because they're in fear that maybe they'll lose their job, or maybe they'll make a bad decision and then it'll come down on them. And so you get these, there's actually 6 types, and the TED Talk breaks down all 6. But I was privileged actually to do this TED Talk in Japan. And the reason was I was invited to do it was Japan has an incredibly tight, different type of culture where people, they take a lot of responsibility personally. And so they work incredibly hard, and their bosses, there's like a very tight command and control structure. And it leads to a lot of stress. And they even have a term in Japan about, it's called power harassment, but it's basically a term that defines what a boss bullying or harassing their person looks like, and it's against the law. On the other side, they also have an incredibly big problem with workplace related suicides. And so it's because of those pressure that they put on themselves internally, as well as what comes down the chain, is people and their culture of like not sharing that with others, where they take it on themselves. And so they wanted me to share my expertise with both sides of that coin to help them kind of open those conversations at work. And yeah, it was an absolute honor to do that. And folks, like, if you want to do a TED Talk, there's a couple steps. The one thing is pick a location that's close-ish to you. Typically it's like where you've gone to college, where you live. Those are some great starting places. But again, it's like, be yourself, because the more it's you and it connects with you and it's your story and your thing, that's the more that's going to connect to the audience. And you'll also get rejected a ton. It's totally normal. Um, so it's about like not taking that personally and just knowing that that's part of the game. It's just like sales. It's every no is one step closer to a yes.
Ladies and gentlemen, I love his authenticity, vulnerability around the TED Talk. Very excited for him where he's going. Great environment to do it in Japan. Unfortunately, that really makes me sad to hear about the high suicide rate. But again, when people are putting pressure on themselves and don't know how to deal with it or release it, it builds up. So hopefully your TED Talk inspires some people to learn how to deal with things and be more open and have discussions and dialogue and how let it build up inside of them. So let's now move into your coaching. You coach high achievers. Please talk to me about that. Who was an ideal client for Rob when it comes to his awesome coaching services?
It's is very similar. Um, I work with a lot of men who are high achieving folks, like executives, entrepreneurs, and they have that buildup of stress and frustration and sometimes anxiety or fear, and they don't know where to put it. And it's very similar to like what you would have experienced in the NFL, or like what I experienced in, especially in heavy industry, is it's like we're men being men, right? And it's like we don't share our feelings. We don't emote. It's like you can be angry, you can be happy, that's it, right? And like neutral, I suppose. And it's like, suck it up and do your job. And it's like, ultimately, that leads us to breaking through. And with a lot of my high achievers, I was literally going to ask you this question, Marcus, when you were talking about your journey, but it's like, have you ever achieved something that you thought was like your dream goal? And then you sat there and you were like, what do I do now?
Of course, Rob. That's exactly what happened with Caden, my construction company. I had a goal of getting to a multiple eight-figure per year business. We got to about $25 million of revenue at the end of 2011. And the beginning of 2012, I said to myself, oh no, what next? What am I going to do? I've hit my goal. Where do I go now? And instead of saying, okay, hiring a coach like you or someone to challenge me to elevate to the next level, to keep, say, I tell clients now, set a goal, achieve a goal, set a new goal. Don't set a goal, achieve a goal, stop. Set a goal, achieve a goal, set a new goal. Boom, boom, boom. And that's how it works. That's how it should work. And so in reality, as I tell people, right, I absolutely know exactly what you're talking about all day.
100%. And I've experienced this too, right? Is like, we're like, hey, our life is going to be complete if we get this job or we get this corner office or we make our business worth, whatever it's worth. Right. And then we hit that and we're like, that didn't feel the way I wanted it to. And that is a classic high achiever. It's like, nothing will ever be big enough. And I was coaching an Olympic gold medalist a few years ago. And I asked her, I kind of made a joke because I knew what her answer would be, but I was like, how long did it last? And she said, they put the medal around my neck. And I was like, what do I do now? And if you've ever experienced that, obviously, maybe not at the Olympic gold medal level, but if you've experienced that, know that both Marcus and I have, and we can help you with this because it's not that you're setting the wrong goals. And it's not that you don't want to achieve bigger and better things. It's that there's a massive you that is driving you to achieve those goals. And that is also preventing you from actually achieving much greater goals and feeling that fulfillment and that tranquility that both of us feel now. And it's about learning, what is that mask? Where did it come from? And then eventually working to let it ignite or step aside so then we can be in self and then our growth is unlimited.
Ladies and gentlemen, when you reach a place of peace, tranquility, and full confidence in yourself, then your absolute opportunity for massive growth truly begins at the highest level. But it comes down to this question: are you willing to be open, authentic, and honest with yourself about where you are, about what needs to be addressed and resolved? And here's the almighty question: are you willing to put the work in to get the results out? Rob can coach you. So can I. Rob can speak to you. So can I. But if you don't listen and apply what Rob talks about, you don't listen, apply what I talk about, then don't expect anything to change. Nothing's going to change until you are ready to change. Plain and simple. Last question, Rob. When you think about all things you're doing right now, coaching, consulting, being an author, spreading the word, getting out there, all these great things, what is one thing that drives you to really help you continue on the path to where you want to be?
For me, it's about not wanting people to experience what I've experienced. And part of that is poor leadership. And part of that is also our own mask that we wear, right? And that high achieving mask that I wore was part of it. And then also the toxic work environment was the other part. And when you put those two together, it was a terrible mix. And I think One is when I coach folks, I always start with you yourself as a leader first, for yourself, for your family, before you even get to work. Then we work on work. And it's just because you cannot, if you're driven by one of these masks, you're the imposter, you're the high achiever, you have to do it all yourself. You have to be the rock holding up the whole company. You feel like you can't say, I don't know the answer, or I can't do that, or I can't say no, or whatever that is. If you are part of that, you have to work on that first before you can give and empower your team to be better, because otherwise they're not going to see it, because they're modeling you. And so that's where it starts with self leadership and expands to team and business leadership, and then also global leadership, right? And that's where the book and the TED Talk comes from, is as I was expanding myself, it was like, oh, I should try to do these things to impact an audience greater than the folks that I can talk to on one-on-one.
Ladies and gentlemen, that's a perfect way to end because, again, as Rob said, it starts with self. If you cannot take, control or take, care of your own life or be accountable to yourself, how are you going to be responsible to others? It is not possible. If you want to be a great leader, you have to start with organizing and cleaning up your own house. Plain and simple. You have to. So again, Rob, fantastic interview, great insights. Again, please tell everyone where they can purchase your book or watch your TED Talk, or if they want to find more about your coaching program. How can our global audience support you?
Absolutely. So the TED obviously is on TED channel. Or you can check it out on my website, robkalwarowsky.com. Marcus had thrown it in the notes because it'll be hard to spell.
For sure.
You can also buy my book, Capitalizing on Chaos. It's available on Amazon, Barnes and Noble. Um, obviously, if it's on Amazon, you can get it anywhere you want. The audiobook is out now as well. So if you want to check that out, it's also audiobook format. And then I'll give all of you a free resource. So Marcus mentioned that the status quo and like starting the work is incredibly hard. It's hard to overcome that, and you're listening to the show and you want to do more, but it's like, where do I start? Where do I want? How do I actually start moving? And so if you send me an email, rob@robkalwarowsky.com, and you just put authentic as the title, you don't have to write anything else. I'll send you an exercise called Find Your Reason, and it'll help you. One is define where you want to go in your life, as well as leverage that against the suffering that you experience in status quo, and that will help you get moving. And that's ultimately, once you get moving, then you become a train and it's hard to stop.
Love it. Ladies and gentlemen, please go to his site, support him, send him an email, put authentic in the subject line. You'll be very glad you did. It's going to be a phenomenal transformation for you to start going in the right direction or continue down the right direction path in your life. We want to thank Legacy Ventures and Mr. Jack Brown for sponsoring this episode. And the authentic tip of this great interview: in life, please remember, if you want to lead others, you must be able to lead yourself first. Look, there's always a saying, don't point the finger at someone, point the thumb back at yourself. The minute you do that and you're more disciplined than you are motivated, you are on your way. You are on your path to greatness. Again, my name is Marques Ogden. I am the host of the Get Authentic with Marcus show. Thanks for tuning in. Have a fantastic day.